Pokémon Generation 8. I can hardly believe we're just about at the end of it. Certainly a generation to be remembered with its highs and lows, both of which serve as end caps to its timeline. And looking back at everything that happened in these last 3 years, I think this might have become one of my favorite generations. Perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but something about it has me feeling a little sad we're about to move on in Scarlet and Violet. Is it a recency bias? Am I just dumb? Or was there really a spark of inspiration in this scheduled tick on a franchise timeline? This is my farewell to Pokemon's 8th generation. This had to be one of the roughest lead-ups to a Pokemon game. The first look, while being pretty basic, was kind of exciting, and the following trailers made things look even more promising. But developer interviews and gameplay demos brought unfortunate news and lackluster proof of concept. E3 2019 was the make or break moment for these games in everyone's respective opinions. I, like many others, wasn't happy about the bad news that we got, like the absence of the national dex and the performance issues apparent in early gameplay. But I'll be darned if I didn't mention how beautiful that trailer from E3 was. A little background about myself: I started creating Pokemon content here on YouTube during Sun and Moon, and things on the channel slowed down in 2018. But just before November of 2019, I decided to revamp my content. And once we had finally gotten Sword and Shield in our hands, I was able to turn things around, eventually leading to where I am today. There are a few extra steps to the story between then and now, but the point is that Pokemon Sword and Shield were a new beginning for me. Starting the game up with a fresh save file once again, waking up in a small town with little significance, was just what I needed, especially because there was always something amazing hidden just out of sight. Getting to see the legendary Pokemon so early on in the game was a cool sight to see, a little taste of the greatness yet to come. And of course, I went onward, completing the story of these games, and they were certainly Pokemon games. The Galar region is one of the most linear regions we've seen in Pokemon. The visuals that make up the region are definitely a step up from previous Pokemon games, but coming in the Nintendo Switch's 3rd year, they felt behind. The story was basic. Interesting concepts for characters were established, but rarely followed through in a meaningful way. With only half the Pokédex and little else to explore, the post-game was almost non-existent. This was by all accounts a Pokemon game. Not the best, not the worst, more a middle-of-the-road entry. And yet, I really enjoyed it. When the cutscenes were allowed to fully tell a story non-verbally, they excelled with their facial expressions and physical acting. The quality of life improvements were much appreciated and made it possible for any Pokemon to become battle ready in minutes. When the story wanted to show you something cool, by golly did it look cool. And the music, oh gosh, the music was as good as ever. I love how dynamic it was during the gym battles, hearing the crowd cheer along to the melody and the whole song even just fading into the background when you were in the menu. It's the little things like that that make me appreciate this game. After actually completing the games, they weren't that bad of a start to the new generation. And only 2 months later, we were given the news that there would be DLC released across the year of 2020. And finally, I think it was the fact that these games were on the home console now that the Pokemon Company and Game Freak decided to go through with this idea. While alternate versions were alright, often adding some cool content and in the olden days making the games actually playable, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were the point that the fatigue started to set in, and most fans questioned what purpose did they really serve. The Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra were a breath of fresh air and a great way to begin this promising new year. And of course, as we all know, disaster struck.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know.
The breaking news: stay at home. That is the order tonight from 4 state governors as the coronavirus pandemic spreads.
Everything shut down, almost everyone stayed home, and we all had a lot more time to play video games and watch YouTube. But thankfully, I was able to use this time to continue making content, and once the Isle of Armor came out, it was a fun time. And only a few months later, the Crown Tundra DLC released, and both of them together made for a nice way to wrap up Sword and Shield. I mean, these are extra adventures with more returning Pokemon and new stories, but they of course don't fix some of the issues with the base game. though they definitely make for a more complete feeling experience when taken all together. It's clear that this was more of a better execution of the ideas presented in the Wild area, and was a way to set the groundwork before we got more grand adventures in Legends Arceus and future games. While I did find myself enjoying the base game, the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra are what I remember most of Sword and Shield. Maybe because they're the most recent in memory, or maybe because they were a better showcase of what the games were capable of. I'm just so glad we got DLC rather than a new game entirely. With the Galar region firmly behind us, many were predicting it would finally be time to return to Sinnoh with Diamond and Pearl remakes, and February 27, 2021 gave us the confirmation. Yeah, this was kind of a rough day. I think the disappointment for the initial trailer would have been much greater had that day's presentation not also given us something completely different. Pokémon Legends Arceus, a new idea for Pokémon and the game that many of us might not have known we had wanted. I think it was pretty clear that Game Freak really wanted to make this game as their return to Sinnoh, but knew that fans would expect a more traditional remake, and so it was decided ILCA would develop Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Yeah, it's up to everyone individually whether these games are good or not, but I'll admit they are not my favorite. I did have some fun with them and got my money's worth of playtime, but I think the true test of a Pokemon game is whether we can see ourselves playing it again in a few years, and I'll say that I find little reason for me to pick up these games again unless I need to record some footage for them specifically. I know they have their diehard fans, but I am just a fair weather one. Now, Pokemon Legends Arceus was probably the perfect game to follow up Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I will say that this is one of my favorite single player experiences in a Pokemon game, but that's not a surprise because the entire thing was made as a single player focused game unlike other recent Pokemon games. The most you can interact with another is trading some Pokemon, which isn't even 100% necessary for certain evolutions anymore because of the introduction of the linking cable item. I bring this up because overall that's my one complaint with Legends Arceus. There isn't much of a post-game or multiplayer component and the Pokédex is very limited, but as a single player Pokemon game that tries some new things, I love it. There was even a small content update about a month later. It was still a weird feeling to get a Pokemon game in January, but everything about this era felt nostalgically cozy while still offering new horizons. I feel like I should speak a lot more in depth about Legends Arceus at some point in the future, even though I've had a great time with the content that I've made most recently. But a Pokemon generation is so much more than just the games, and I would say I'm happy with everything else released during this time period. Within the course of only 3 years, we got Twilight Wings, Evolutions, Hisuian Snow, and Poketoon. I've been a big fan of these additional animated web series, and this generation was full of them. I really hope this means we'll be seeing even more of them in the future. And when you add up everything else like the trading card games, some of the main series anime products released, and the spin-off games, I would say that Generation 8 turned out pretty good. It's weird to say that I now feel nostalgic for something that started only 3 years ago and is technically still going on at the time of writing. But I think the main reason I was able to enjoy this generation so much was because it was really the first generation I got to experience as not only an adult with disposable income, but a Pokemon fan able to steadily create good content based on the very franchise I enjoy. I was in a much better place with my physical and emotional health as opposed to Generation 7. So I guess that allowed me to really take advantage of everything offered and go in with a good mindset. I think I still have a long way to go before I'm exactly where I want to be, but with Generation 8 being the beginning of this new step in my life, I'll always look back on it with fondness. And it all only gets me even more excited as we move into Generation 9 because I can only imagine all the new experiences it'll bring. I'm taking things pretty easy until the actual release date of Scarlet and Violet, so I kind of just wanted to look back and let out some of my thoughts about these last 3 years. I do of course want to thank everyone who's been watching since then, and I hope you all have a great time in this new era as well. And let me know your thoughts because I found it interesting seeing everybody taking a look back during this week. But for now, this is where I say thank you and goodbye to Pokemon Generation 8. Thank you to all of my channel members for your continued support, especially the great Gators, Jackson, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Michaela, Mr. Pig Puncher, Phantom Pyro, and Quago. If you would also like to support, get your name shouted out here, and access to emotes for comments and live streams, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes. Anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
Your journey to become a Pokemon champion starts here. Meet brand new Pokémon. Adventure awaits in this vast, expansive area where you can battle gigantic wild Pokémon. you can forge your path to greatness. And Pokémon Sword and Pokémon Shield, only for Nintendo Switch. Games rated E for everyone.